election. When you take a look at the Electoral Commission and all it has gone through, from preparing a new voters register, from all the things that went into it, and the assurances that the Commission is giving us of its readiness, what are your observations on everything up to the point we are right now?
Well, first of all, let me acknowledge to your witness, your viewers, that I also have my protection, but we've decided that it's not necessary at this point to wear it. The Electoral Commission, of course, has a very long history. And I think the part of the history that is most relevant to our audience is the history of consultation that our various electoral commissioners from the days of the very first ones, Dr. Farijan, and through Madame Charlotte Osei, the IPAC, the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, and its role in setting the ground rules and for consultation, and just making sure that everything that is being done is cleared. Now, unless I speak differently from what my party executives have been saying, the party is of the view, the NDC is of the view that they have not enjoyed the same kind of collaboration and consultation under the current Electoral Commission. So whether, and invariably, the Electoral Commission has had the approach of just steamrolling its views, irrespective of what our party members are saying. Most recently, it's come to light that certain documents that they've shared, apparently with regards to the final tally of, the electoral register, there are still a lot of anomalies in that register, and I believe at an appropriate time, the party will come out with what they are seeing. But other than that, from a global point of view, Ghana is still seen as a bastion of democracy and relative good governance in Africa. When you have countries to our left, in Cote d'Ivoire, where people are running for 3 terms, and to Guinea, where people are still running for 3 terms, and to Cameroon, where presidents have been in office for almost 40 years, and etc., Ghana still looks very good compared to these other countries. But as Ghanaians, we always want the best for our country. We may be seeking perfection, if you might say so. So even though certain things may look like only small issues for other people.
Are you more like saying that your party and yourself haven't been
my party is not satisfied at all.
At all.
I can say that my party is not satisfied.
So you're not confident that this Electoral Commission will deliver the outcome that you're expecting?
Well, it is at the end of the day tomorrow, and if there's any reruns or whatever, that we can reach a final conclusion as to whether this has been a free and fair election or not. But you may know that even in the United States, which we all have thought of as the bastion of democracy, the President of the United States till today has not yet accepted the results of that election, and has not even invited the presumed winner of the election, that is Joe Biden, to the White House, even for coffee or for a drink or for water. He delayed for 3 weeks, until just last week, I think, even giving authorization to other U.S. government officials to welcome or to treat, even to deal with the Biden administration, or incoming administration, even for the coronavirus task force, which ought to brief an incoming president on where they are with fighting the virus. They were not being given a chance to be. So that's the United States. And if you compare that to a developing country like Ghana, and things are still not perfect, then you can see why things are.
You can see the reason for the concerns. But let's look at your expectations for tomorrow.
Of course.
Irrespective of these concerns you raise and your party raised, you're psyched up enough for a contest tomorrow. What are your expectations?
My expectation is that the NDC has to win, but we are expecting to win against some very heavy-duty adverse decisions of the NPP administration. For example, the decision to collapse certain banks. Without getting into all the details, we see it as deliberately targeted at certain individuals and certain institutions, which of course has cost the whole nation about 20 billion cedis. Given the apparent cost of the financial cleanup of about 7 billion, we have just not any understanding as to
but,
why
but
it
those
should
will be
take.
those will be policy issues which will eventually make up the choices that people make. But I want us not to go into the areas where it will be posing themselves as political campaign messages. Really, that's what we're trying to avoid.
No, they're not political campaign based. I'm saying we are doing an analysis. You're asking me the kind of
expectations
are
for tomorrow.
why would people vote this way or why would they vote that way?
Great.
Yeah, so there's an analysis at this time, and I'm saying that among the reasons are the fact that many depositors have still not received their funds, and you've seen demonstrations and all kinds of things about those who say they still haven't received their deposits, and they claim they will vote against the ruling party just because they have been denied funds. There will be numerous factors in every village or locality. There'll be local issues. Roads have not been built in some areas. They have been built in some other areas. Free SHS, of course, is a debatable issue that has been discussed in various fora. The current administration makes a lot of claims about having introduced it. NDC also shows evidence on your TV station, other TV stations, of having rolled out a free SHS policy, partial free SHS in 2014.
Which it called
for example, we called it progressive. So depending on how the electorate see actually who introduced it and who contributed to it, because we say government is a continuum.
Yeah.
Nobody starts from government from scratch. When you come, some things have been done already. A few roads have been built, you build a few more. Some clinics have been built, you build a few more. So often it's a challenge as to where the cake is sliced for individual parties to take their share of the credit, because obviously that's what is happening in Ghana now. But the good news for Ghana as a whole, on the broader scale, is that we are moving closer and closer to issue-based debates. The fact that one party is claiming that we've done more than you have done, and you also say you have also done more than we have done. So then the cup is either half full or half empty.
You think that's healthy?
No, it's healthy. It's not the aspect is healthy.
Both sides focus on what they did, and they put forward their record.
It's a comparative comparison of records, as it were. So whether one party has built more schools or not built more schools, the other party has built more bridges, whatever. I mean, at least that is for the electorate to weigh. And our view is that when the weighing scale has been, if it is not fiddled with or adulterated, and it's a proper scale.
Your party is concerned that there are
the
instances that suggest that the government will be, maybe the incumbent administration will be seeking to rig. I mean,
well, rigging comes in different ways. For example, you are aware of radio stations and TV stations that are not operating now. You know,
and that constitutes rigging.
No, XYZ. Well, if you cannot speak, party his voice has been muted, because we had stations that could speak our language for us whenever we wanted to say certain things, broadcast our messages, television, commercials. So if you cut all those things from us, I mean, you pack the judiciary with your judges of that you think are favorably disposed to you. And as I said, I started with the banking industry, also slice other. So if you look systematically, packing the courts, packing the security agencies with also West Gorgon type incidents, security forces that are supposedly loyal to only one group, pushing a lot of security people into the Volta region and frightening that region because you expect them to come out to vote and therefore you want to suppress their votes. All those things, a little bit adding up, will obviously have an effect. Of course, the COVID also gave the ruling government a lot of excuses to pump all kinds of goodies into the system and say free water, partially free electricity, so and so, using public sector funds, but for political purposes. So it's up to us all to judge whether that is a free and fair election on those bases. So there may things are not illegal, because you can give free water, but it obviously will have a certain effect on some people. Not everybody will have enjoyed.
You think that in the political context,
those things are important.
An unfair advantage.
Of course, anything that you can do that gives you an advantage over your opponent, has a right to say it's unfair.
So you raise the issue of the AR. So
yes.
I want to focus a little bit on that, to talk generally about what your impressions are with the preparations by the security agencies to ensure everyone is protected and there is a peaceful election. For the police service, the army, and all security stakeholders are getting involved. Are you content with all the processes that have gone on in terms of security preparations?
Well, some of the things that they've done, I think, are noteworthy and are helpful for example, attempts to identify or to give security personnel some particular uniforms and to share with the public the kind of uniforms that they would wear and the kinds of uniforms that will not be proper or illegal. Any of those kinds of things are helpful. Public education is always good. So to that extent, yes, if on the day, the reality is that we only see properly uniformed police officers, and as they themselves have said, they will not tolerate illegal, whether you call them, well, there's a name for them, macho men or whatever, or the Delta forces and all these vigilante groups, etc. The question, the NDC believes strongly that the vigilante groups have been merged with the existing security forces. So there are people in the security forces that are very well known to NDC.
So the NDC believes that irrespective of calls for disbanding political vigilantes, these vigilantes belonging to the ruling government have seamlessly merged into the security services.
That is the whole idea. They've been seamlessly merged. They have been regularized.
Is there evidence for that?
Oh, I think our security department or committee can give all the necessary evidence that anybody wants. I mean, this is well known. They can do it by individuals who are known. They have actually identified people who were not properly trained but happened to wear military or police uniforms. It's not my area of expertise. Yeah, I'm only reporting what I've heard, and I'm sure you've also heard these things. And I'm sure there are various fora where our officials could come and provide appropriate evidence if that's the case. But let's go with the fact that a committee of inquiry was set up on so a commission with Emil Short as the chairman was set up. They made many recommendations. What has happened to the recommendations? I mean, you're a news person. I think you're better informed than I am. But I am not able to tell you what has happened with 3, 4, 7, or 8 of the recommendations. I also was on commission of inquiry. As far as most Ghanaians are concerned, it has been packed and just been ignored. So as to how the government is attempting to implement any of the recommendations, I can't tell you, but our view was that the government did not seem interested in the commission's recommendations.
And that worries you and your
party? It has to worry all of us. It has to worry all Ghanaians. All Ghanaians want peaceful elections. I mean, I used to work for a church. I'm just coming from church, actually, by the way. So we pray all the time. We pray for the government of the day. We pray for His Excellency the President and the other members of the administration, for the Chief Justice and for the police. So we are not people who are opposed to them or against them or who do not wish them well. But we also hope and wish that His Excellency the President and the government of the day, who have power that has been ceded to them by all of us, the Ghanaian population, will use the power wisely and fairly so that not a single life is lost as a result of any misbehavior on election day.
I know that security issues are things that are on the hot burner for everyone, like you've said, but we're still going to have this election.
Absolutely.
And Ghanaians will still need to conduct themselves in a way that will give us credible elections.
Absolutely.
Of course, I know the expectations of the security agencies, but there are the supporters of the main opposition NDC, which you are from, and the ruling government's MPP, who have adopted, I should use the word, a little bit more of aggressive tactics and approaches to campaigning and rhetoric and all of that. Campaign season is over, though. But what would you say to all the supporters of the various parties in how they should conduct themselves to ensure that their vote counts and their vote delivers the win they are expecting?
Well, I think it's a matter of each party's supporters going to the polling booth early tomorrow morning and staying there, going through the processes. I guess there'll be some COVID protection processes. Then your name will be checked on the voters register and all of that. But at the last count, there were about 7,000 names on the voter register that were still not accounted for. I don't know in the last 2-3 days whether that has been regularized and all that has been cleaned up. But we are hoping not to have people going to any polling station and saying they don't find their name in register because they've been switched around and all kinds of things have happened to them. That will be the first test of whether that register is valid or not. But if people can go to the polling stations, vote their minds freely, come out freely, there are no macho men around, nobody's chased out of any place, there are no squabbles until we count the polling, the ballot box papers in each polling station, 38,000 or so polling stations, then the outcome will be, I hope, free and fair enough, and everyone, I think the two main candidates met recently, just a few days ago, and signed a peace pact and agreed both. And the good news is that both of them have lost before and have accepted before. You know, President Akufo-Addo has lost elections before. He has accepted, or at least he went to court and still lost and accepted it. And President Mahama has also lost an election the last time. He also accepted it. So already the augury is for at least them, the leaders, to potentially accept if they don't get the outcome they deserve. But I know it's painful whenever you lose an election. As I'm saying, the President of the United States, as we sit today, has not accepted a lost election.
So we're going into this election with so many issues. You raised one of them, the discussion on free senior high school and the positions of the various parties on this. You also raised the issue that this year's campaigning season has brought up a lot of issues, credible issues. So let's put education aside. Do you get the sense that the parties, NDC and MPP, have both made their ambitions well known enough through how elaborate they have taking their manifestos to the people?
I think if you look at the airtime that has been utilized, especially in the last couple of weeks, it's very heavy on political party messages. I mean, NDC has this message of, 4 more years to steal more if you want this NDC MPP to come to power. And PP is talking about 4 years more for their president. So the messages have come out, but that is where, of course, the incumbency advantages all over the world. The incumbent has more resources usually, and therefore can pump out a lot more messages using all kinds of, advertisements plus documentaries and interviews and normal airtime. In any case, any president anywhere in the world, by virtue of his position, anytime he speaks is news anyway. So if you look at a daily graphic almost any day, you find news. If you do a content analysis, 70% or 80% of the news, normal news, is for the ruling party. And then, of course, they are using the various government agencies themselves, such as the National Board for Small-Scale Industries, which used to be under my ministry, Ghana Export Promotion Agency, and so forth, to also publicize whatever those agencies claim to have done. Ghana Export Import Bank put out figures about what they've done, planting for food and agriculture, putting out all kinds of figures. So a lot of government machinery is used to promote the incumbent's agenda, much to the detriment of the opponent. But it's partly normal politics, but it's also partly, as I said, the fact that the NDC's mouthpieces have been consciously muzzled, such as Radio XYZ and Radio Gold, and therefore NDC cannot, promote its agenda in as competitive a way as in the past.
And this brings me to the final question. I'd like to wrap up our conversation on how you get a sense that the two leading parties, NDC and MPP, their activities have been, excuse my wording, grand enough than the other minority parties, which don't seem to be making a lot of presence. Do you get a sense that perhaps...
this is a two-party country. I mean, two-party countries are not uncommon around the world. In Britain, it's a two-party country, Labour, Conservative. In the United States, a two-party country, Republicans and Democrats. And in Israel, there's Likud, and other countries, 2-3 parties are too many. I mean, in most countries, there are countries that have 75 or 80, political candidates or political parties. But in every election, only 2 or 3 really play significant roles. So in this election, the smaller parties are very important, because if neither of the two parties gets 5 to, or is shot by 5 to 7%, let's say, it could go into a rerun.
And
at that point,
a first round win.
You don't get a first round win. Then you need the allies from the other parties to make it possible for you to...
Is the NDC expecting a second round?
I mean, because when you are in opposition, often it's not easy for you to knock your opponent out, just as in boxing, in a knockout punch.
But a runoff allows you to do that.
Say it again?
A runoff allows you
exactly.
to do
So that's why I'm saying you may have to go into a second round or a runoff in order to then take the battle finally to your opponent.
You are expecting a runoff?
I'm not expecting it. I'm saying it's a possibility, just because we are in opposition. So your attempt to knock off your opponent often may not take a knockout punch, and it may take winning on points.
Right, Dr. Spielgabra, I'm very grateful for your time,
you so
and
much.
thank you extremely.
Yes.
So, Dr. Spielgabra has been speaking to us, and this is still your Election Command Center. Later on in the evening, we'll be also having another exclusive interview with Nana Komia, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the State Transport, STC. He will be here also, and we'll be talking through the same issues of expectations to the elections and whether he gets a sense that the various parties have put out their messages more effectively. Still stay with us. I will cross over to Alfred now to continue with our coverage.
And from Ground Zero in the West Wing Studios here on your Election Command Center, 790, in that exclusive interview with Dr. Eko Spielgabra. We remain your Election Command Center. And just so you know that the MPP's Nana Komia will also be joining us at Ground Zero in the West Wing Studios as well here on your Election Command Center as we build up heavily into December 7 here on your Election Command Center across all media journal platforms. And we have here TV3. We're also on Onia TV, Onia FM 95.1, 3 FM 92.7, Akoma 87.9 in Kumasi and beyond. Also on Connect FM 97.1 in Takrady and beyond on 3news.com, TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279. And with you as well out there every step of the way. Let's connect. We're highly interactive throughout this coverage on TV3 Ghana, on Facebook, DSTV as well, channel 279. Let's hear from you. Let's hear from you as we get into it. We have social polls right there with Elena Piampofo just to hear from you what you are tweeting at us as we go on in the coverage. But Martin, as we painted the picture earlier, according to the age demographics of the Electoral Commission's own analysis going into the elections, from the 18 to 21, who are the first-time voters, where we saw that the Ashanti region has the highest number of first-time voters going into this election, followed closely by the Greater Accra region as well, having the second highest number of the first-time voters. And we did concede that indeed the issues that will be of concern to them, education, and we'll see how free SHS will pan out in there, and issue their very social media survey. But when you look at the expansion of the age bracket from 18 to 35 years old, 18 to 35, the total number of persons, registered voters between the ages of 18 to 35 actually form 55.1%. Yeah. So Martin, this age bracket is over 55% of the total eligible or registered voters going into this election, 18 to 35 years.
It means that those within that age bracket are more than half of the national figure.
Absolutely.
More than half.
And that's how crucial this 18 to 35 year group is. And guess what? In that same bracket, we have 9,375,515 out of this over 17 million people making up the 18 to 35 year group. They're young, they're heavy on social media, the expectations are very high with
Alfred, on the same
well.
tangent, I think that if you look at the way the parties structured their message, apart from the bit where they missed out on the tertiary education, and in the last few days we've seen that both of them are trying to say continuing students will get it halfway, they'll pay half for them, then freshmen will get full payment. It is now that hit the parties and they are, forcefully infusing it into their manifestos. However, if you look at the other promises, you could tell that both parties considered the majority of the registered voters. So the NDC hammered heavily on job creation, and then also the free the legalization of Okada, etc. All of those things were considered before those decisions were made, considering the fact that the NDC went from the top of the country to the bottom and spoke to individuals. Sure. The NPP, on the other hand, kept hammering the fact that if you consider NAPCO, they've created a number of jobs with NAPCO, and they hope that those people will see the jobs that they've created and retain them in power. So it meant that the friction between both parties is going to center heavily on how they're able to woo the first-time voters and then the younger generation who have also registered.
A very, very important point that you made there. So education, employment is going to be key determinants of how the 18 to 35-year-olds are going to vote. And guess what? They are over 55% of the total eligible or registered voters going into this election. 9,375,515. The NPP says they've created over 2 million jobs. The NDC says they're coming in big on the big portion issues with that as well. They have a 1 million job target for the first year in administration. Yeah. But you see, with the first-time voters, the Ashanti region had the highest. Yeah. Guess what? With the 18 to 35 bracket, the Greater Accra region has the highest number of voters, registered voters within this bracket of 18 to 35 years. 1,940,380 registered voters in the Greater Accra region who are between the ages of 18 and 35, followed by the Ashanti region, 1,665,615 of the registered voters between the age of 18 and 35 are in the Ashanti region, followed closely as well by the Eastern region, 832,854 registered voters between 18 and 35 years. And it's important that we make this point because of the percentage that these 18 to 35 years olds occupy or take going into this election. And Abena is seated now to engage a few political analysts as well, get into the minds of what's happening with less than 10 hours for polls to open.
All I know is the eve of the election.
Absolutely.
I've stopped counting now, like seriously.
Great stuff.
Anyways, great. Yes, indeed, we are your Election Command Center, and we are here to bring you all that you need to know as we go into the December 7, 2020 polls, which is tomorrow. And right now in the studio with me, we have Dr. Ali Nyaba. He's a senior lecturer at the KNUST, that's the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, lectures history and political science. Also, we have Albert Yoyang. He's the national coordinator of WANEP, that's the West African Network for Peace Building. Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to have you here.
Good evening.
So the eve of the 8th general elections under the Fourth Republic. How do you feel? Let me start with you. What are your sentiments going into this all-important elections?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And a very warm evening to fellow Ghanaians who are watching us. It's exciting because we've come a long way. And if it were about 10 to 15 years ago, there was a lot of tension when elections is approaching. But we've had 7 successful elections. We've had 2 or 3 successful turnovers, like NDC ruling and then MPP taking over in 3 times. So we've come a long way. Ghanaians have learned a lot. And I think the turning point was after the 1979-1981 revolutions, the military rule that followed, and then the immediate post-military rule. I'm talking about the beginning of the Fourth Republic under the NDC from 1992 to 2000, taught Ghanaians a very good lesson. It appears we have seen it all, and we have resolved to stay with multi-party democracy. Let me take you a little bit back beyond the Fourth Republic. When Ghana gained independence, Kwame Nkrumah's government was deemed to be autocratic. The bookmakers say that his parliament was cronies, people who he put there to just spearhead his agenda. So the revolution that toppled that government in 1966 claimed that it was a nationalist revolution, something that was supposed to deliver Ghana from an autocratic regime. Then came that military regime that lasted a few years before 1969, when the Second Republic started. And then this Second Republic, Ghanaians had a lot of hope. They felt that it was represented by intellectuals. The parliament was not made up of cronies anymore, unlike the First Republic. These were intellectuals with diverse intellectual backgrounds who had learned from Kwame Nkrumah's experience and did not like it, and were ready to reorient the Ghanaian political system. That too failed. When I talk about failed, I don't want to go into details. Sure. That too certainly failed. So just about 27 months into the Second Republic, there was another revolution. And that one too, the first one was national liberation. The second revolution was national redemption. So it looks like the two contrasting First and Second Republics failed. Then there was a Third Republic. So there was a military rule. In fact, the first military rule came with the agenda that they want to prepare Ghana for an immediate multi-party democracy. The second one did not come with such an agenda. They came to rule. So they stayed a little longer, from 1972 to 78, 79, until there was another revolution. So the military regime also failed woefully. Although Echampong did well, you can speak about
some policies here.
Yeah, some notable infrastructural development and other things. But things got to the worst by the late 1970s. So there was another military regime, and that was the decisive one. The two military regimes were not as brutal as the 1979, the 1981, 79-81. So I think that was the worst in terms of brutalities. So Ghanaians learned. Then came the Fourth Republic. You see, it was a decisive movement for Ghana, whether we could turn from one democratic regime to another. And
we took that up and we've never looked back, and we're just keeping going.
We succeeded gloriously in 2000. Then in 2008 we did again, and in 2016 we have done again.
Right.
So I am saying that we have come a long way, and sitting here today, I'm rather excited because we are no more at that point where we are looking back. We are contemplating, because we have tasted the different versions of regimes. Sure. And I think we feel we have arrived.
Right.
It is not the best, but it is getting better. I think
exactly, it's definitely getting better. It's work in progress, like they say. Mr. Yo Yang, you work with the Peace and Security Organization, and listening to the kind of history we've had as a country, obviously the quest for peace, and for that matter to maintain peace and stability, cannot be overstated. And so, from your perspective, looking at how far we've come and moving forward, how are Ghanaians supposed to take the peace and stability that we have? I mean, some people would say that perhaps we take it for granted. You look at the sub-regions, you've had a number of issues here and there, but we seem to have some stability. People refer to us as the beacon of democracy, the most stable democracy in the West African sub-region, and indeed on the continent. And so, as a person coming from a peace and security organization, what would you say to Ghanaians in terms of the peace and stability that we have?
I think that basically, if you look at around, as a country, there are a lot of things happening in many of the countries, West Africa, Africa, and the general feeling is like there is an imposition of governments on many of the states, many of the people. And so Ghana is seen as a different country, where many now use us as the example, that can inspire their own democracies, And it's like you said, we are considered a beacon. And if you consider the reports that are coming out in terms of peace index, we seem to be performing better. We might lapse a bit, but gradually. And he indicated that as a people, we have become more and more civilized, and we become far different after every other election. You know, if you look at the trajectories in terms of incidences of violence and the forms of violence, you know, and our own communication, you know, a lot of things have changed. And there seems to be that resoluteness that we don't want to reverse the clock. You know, we want to continue to mature our democracy and to, you know, now focus on a lot of things. For instance, if you look at we still talk about hate speeches, you know, that are, you know, and inciting to violence and all that. But generally, as a country, we are far, far different than the previous elections that we've conducted, you know. And so a few people may make comments here and there, you know, but whenever those comments are made, you see that almost the generality of the population will say, no, we don't want to go that level.
Right.
You know, so we are beginning to be more and more respectful of each other and thinking that no, and if you look at also the campaign this year, we are more issue-based, you know, policy-based than just making, you know, rhetoric,
statements here and there,
here and there.
Right.
So generally, as a people, we are becoming more and more matured, and I think that this year there could be instances of violence, you know, as we have witnessed in the voter registration and the campaigning and all that. But I think that we may be better than we have performed
And
before.
talking about how well we've been able to come far and the kind of things we've been able to do, obviously we cannot lose sight of the contributions of the institutions, such as the National Peace Council.
Exactly.
And just recently, in fact, I believe on Friday, 2 days ago,
Yes.
there was that peace pact that was signed by the two political parties. And indeed, I think one of the contestants, 12 of them, so one of them, Mr. Ayariga, for instance, had concerns about the fact that, yes, you have 12 candidates on the ballot paper, yet you're signing a peace pact and you have only two do that. What's your take on that?
I think that, you know, in terms of we say multi-party democracy, but you would observe that gradually as a country we are going to a two-party state. You know, and you see that many of the smaller parties have kind of sympathy towards the major two parties, the MPP and DC, you know, and they are kind of being collapsed in a way. And the two main parties have a way of, let me say, courting them to join them, you know, and if you look at the following of these two parties, and who have been very active in terms of our politicking, it has been the two main political parties. Now, again, you look at the incidences that we record in terms of violence, in terms of the rhetoric, in terms of the hate speeches, inciting to, you know, they have been coming from the two main political parties.
Right.
And the anxiety in terms of our multi-party democracy, you know, is arising from these two main political parties. And it looks like, okay, if you deal with these two parties, then you would be doing a lot, you know. And I think that the Peace Council hasn't done IDEC, you know, the National House of Chiefs and all those parties that came together to do this, you know, have not done the wrong thing, you know, because if you happen to address the reservoir of the challenges we have in our democracy, then you would have the others also following suit.
Very well. Now, back to you, Dr. Nyaba. Generally, you talked about the fact that post-Nkrumah, there was that zeal to, you know, get on board multi-party, a multi-party system. And indeed, Mr. Yolyang has made mention of the fact that, yes, we are gradually appearing to have this duopoly on our hands. And how do we reconcile that quest for a multi-party democracy with what we are seeing currently, and what can be done? Indeed, the smaller political parties raise issues about the fact that, well, they're not given platforms, they are not, you know, encouraged, as it were, to do what they need to do to get to the top, like the two main parties are or have reached. And so definitely we do have a problem with that multi-party democracy thing we think we would need or we desire for. We currently have these two strong political parties who in some way or the other, one way or the other, have an impact or an influence on how the smaller parties, how well they do.
Yeah, first of all, if you look at the significance of these so-called smaller political parties, it has waned over the period from the beginning of the Fourth Republic. I'm talking about from 1992. If you ask me why has their significance waned, I would say rather than staying put and then holding on to their ideologies. After every election since 1992, they get themselves aligned to one or the other of the two major political parties.
Parliament,
Aside from that, the two major political parties has a tradition. The NDC is an amalgamation of the Nkrumahist. And along the line, if you see whenever there's an election and there's going to be a runoff, they always align, the so-called Nkrumahist tradition always align with the NDC. And then the MPP traces its roots back to the UJCC and UPPP traditions. So they have a very solid, strong political traditions. You know, from the beginning of politics in Ghana, it was the UGCC and then the CPP. And when Nkrumah was overthrown, definitely by the adherents of the offshoots of the UGCC, those who believed in Nkrumah's ideologies held on. And gradually, when the Fourth Republic started and the NDC was formed and claimed to be a social democrat, claimed to be ideologically inclined to social democracy, those of Nkrumah's ideological orientation also hooked up to the NDC. So they have a long traditional background, political background, that maybe the smaller political parties have not had. But I think the major reason is that their significance have waned. The PNC, for instance, in the first two elections was capable of getting 2%, and there were other smaller political parties that could get 5%, but they struggled in the last two elections before this to even get 1%. I'm talking about for a political party to get 1%. If you look at this current 2020 campaigns, what Ghana Union movement is doing, I think that is how the smaller political parties started.
I think on that note, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll interrogate that further, exactly what GUM is doing that perhaps should be emulated by the others. Because obviously we don't want this duopoly on our hands. We want to have indeed a multi-party democracy. This is your Election Command Center. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussions with Dr. Nyaba and Mr. Youyang. See you shortly.
Momentous election, unprecedented candidates, the ultimate question: who will lead Ghana's next chapter and win the race for the presidency? 275 parliamentary seats, 12 presidential candidates, over 17 million voters. Media General is covering it all. Election night in Ghana with the nation's trusted source. Round-the-clock election coverage starting December 6th. The decision time is here. Who will be Ghana's ultimate choice? The answer is in 38,622 polling stations in 275 constituencies across the 16 regions of Ghana. We have eagle eye reporters everywhere. Stay connected to your Election Command Center on TV3, Onia TV, 3FM 92.7, Onia 95.1 FM, Akuma 87.9 FM in Kumasi, Connect FM 97.1 in Takrady, and on 3news.com, and online on all our social media platforms. Election 2020 on your Election Command Center. Trusted and credible.
Please don't bring problem to this country, because you don't have anywhere to go. You're all Ghanaians, you need a peace, you need to stay here, you can't go anywhere. So easy, take it easy, do what you can, no problem, you don't have anywhere to go, please. During this election, I'm pledging for peace. There shouldn't be any violence during and after the election. Thank you.
Obi bia nkoto na aba fefefe yempe gidigidi bia asundue ne yempe na bibia anya boko ye wi abato no so ne ye kenkan a obi bia fa asundue na bibia anya fefefe ye da mos